A common question about lens replacement is, why do we need to replace the lens at all? There's a lot of parts to our body that we never need to replace. Most people don't end up needing to have a hip replaced or an elbow or a shoulder. It happens, but it's not the common thing. With lens replacement, eventually everyone, no matter how long they hold out, will need lens replacement. And even if they don't know they need it, eventually they will. So what makes the lens different that requires replacing it? So to start things off, just to orient us and give us an area to navigate from, I'm going to draw an eyeball. This is an eye from the side looking out. There's this corneal dome on the front right here. And then there's an iris. And then behind that, so this is your pupil right here. And behind that pupil, hiding in the dark, is this natural lens. Now your lens, I've drawn it much larger here so that we can see it, because the real one is about the size of an M&M, a plain M&M, not a peanut M&M. That's my favorite lens joke. There is a condition called lentoglobus where it looks like a peanut M&M. Anyway, it's the shape of an M&M as well. It's this oblate sphere that is flattened on either side, and all the way around it there is this ring of muscle, and this ring of muscle has these little, what look like little trampoline springs. Now remember, all of this is in 3 dimensions all the way around it, so this ring of muscle doesn't look like a bump, it looks like a steering wheel going all the way around the eye, and that contracting is what changes the lens inside the eye. So the corneal dome on the front is the stronger lens. It doesn't really change very much over the course of your life. The lens on the inside though, your natural crystalline lens, which we should label since we're talking so much about it. There. The natural crystalline lens, it does change over the course of your life. And some scientists have given this a name, and that name is dysfunctional lens syndrome. Now, the thing with dysfunctional lens syndrome is it's not a pick or choose type of thing. There are some diseases that seem to just choose a random fate for each person, whether they were born lucky or unlucky. Dysfunctional lens syndrome is something that happens to 100% of people over time. It's the same way that other parts of the body slowly age. Some might be a little bit more resistant over time, or some might be a little bit more vulnerable to aging, but all of those parts of your body age. That's true of the lens as well, and that natural aging process to the lens inherently is what makes it dysfunctional over time. As a matter of fact, the best your lens will ever be is on your 8th birthday. I specifically made sure to tell my son on his 8th birthday, today it's the best it's ever going to be today, Luke. Your best lens ever. Because it's the best it'll be on your 8th birthday, and then it slowly gets worse over time. So what is it that's so great about your 8th birthday? Well, your lens has formed now. It's got good optics, but it's very, very clear. And it's very, very flexible. When you're an 8-year-old, well, and younger than that too, your lens has the consistency of Jell-O that's been out of the fridge for 2 hours. It's very, very squishy, for lack of a better word, which means that this ring of muscle around the lens is able to autofocus incredibly easily because it's using its autofocusing powers on a substrate that does not have a lot of natural resistance to it. That's why when a little kid will show you something on your phone, they'll hold it this close to your face, because to them, of course, it'd be very, very clear right there. They can autofocus easily because they have this close to their 8th birthday beautiful lens. But over time, what happens is the lens lays down new rings from the outside in. It's a lot like a tree. So I'll draw a tree here so that we can remember this as we move on later. So what happens with a tree is every tree starts off as this little sad or cute little sapling. I hope that looks like a tiny burgeoning oak tree. And even when they're first starting out, they have to have these little pylons nailed into the ground around them to hold them in place, because the trunk of a tree, a new oak tree or well, any tree really, is so flexible that, you know, you don't want some jerk to come kick it over. And so it needs to be protected. That same tree has these layers of cork cambium. I had to learn that in plant biology, which I never thought I'd use again, but I got to today. It lays down these new layers of bark and new layers of trunk, the woody stem that grows thicker and thicker and thicker around the tree. And the layers that are on the inside become more and more compressed. And before long, or over about 100 years, the tree goes from this really flexible, elastic type of material to a big solid oak that you could crash a Buick into, and the tree's not going to have any problem, but the car will be totaled. And the difference between those two things, besides just the years and decades that passed, is how many layers got laid down and made more compact on the inside. That same process happens to the lens over time. From your 8th birthday on, the new rings are getting laid on the outside, and the stuff on the inside has nowhere to go, so it gets more and more and more compact. And that does two things. The first of those is it makes that lens inflexible. And the second of those is it makes that lens cloudy. So inflexibility is the first thing that you notice, and it's when people talk about, hey, once you turn 40, you're going to need your reading glasses. And it's not specifically at 40, it's different ages for different folks, but typically somewhere between age 42 and 50. 42 if you're kind of unlucky, and 50 if you made it farther than everybody else. Your lens will lose enough of its autofocus that you either have to get a pair of readers, get bifocals, or lift your glasses up to read things. And that's because the inflexibility has happened over time, where this lens has lost its autofocus, its ability for this ring of muscle to let it focus on things up close. And that is its main job inside the eye, is to do that autofocus, and it loses the chance to do that after it gets too hardened with time, like this big oak tree. The second of those is it's cloudy, and more specifically, it gets a lack of contrast sensitivity. The optics aren't as good before it gets full-on cloudy. When the lens gets so cloudy you can't see through it at all anymore, that's what we call a cataract. And that's when insurance says, yes, you can have cataract surgery now. But that's really far down the line. What happens is, first it gets inflexible, but even as that's happening, your vision in low light, low contrast situations will slowly start to degrade. And you probably remember this happening the first time that having low light in a room made it difficult to read something. If the lights were on bright enough, you could read it just fine. Well, that's because you've lost contrast, because all of those rings have gotten more and more compact over time. And both of those things are the final stage of dysfunctional lens syndrome. After that, you go on to get cataracts.